Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Hope you're all doing fine. Today I'll be showing some CD purchases from charity shops, and these were £1 or less, apart from the first two where I paid a little bit more. Okay, let's get started. And first up we've got Under the Milky Way, The Best of the Church. And this was put out on the Buddha label in America. I paid £1.50 for this. It came out in America only, as Under the Milky Way had proved to be a surprise chart hit, and it features tracks from their albums up to 1994's Sometime Anywhere. The early psych pop tracks are the ones that really appeal to me, and it's a good introduction, I think, to the first half of the Church's career. Next up we've got Dexter Gordon, Our Man in Paris, and this is on the Blue Note label, and it's a 2003 remaster by Rudy Van Gelder. Tenor saxophonist Dexter Gordon was actually living in Copenhagen in 1963, but he was aware of the three bosses who were playing and recording in Paris at the time, and they consisted of expat Americans, pianist Bud Powell and drummer Kenny Clarke, and they were joined by the French bassist Pierre Michelot. It's an exuberant and effortless performance by Dexter Gordon and the rest of the band. Next we have Julian Cope and Donald Ross Skinner and Rite. And this was put out on Julian Cope's own label, which he set up specially, Ma-Gog. And I paid 50 pence for this, and I've looked on Discogs and it actually sells for £20 or more. It was a mail order only release. I can hear an influence from Noy in the drumming, but unlike Noy, there's no edginess or brooding menace to this recording. Amat Hysteria works the best on here, which includes strings from the William Stukeley Quintet, but the two 24-minute plus studio jams that end this album are just joyless and self-indulgent. Next we've got Peter Hammill and What Now on his own Fee label, and this was a 50 pence purchase. It came out in 2001, and it's a release I was totally unaware of. He's joined on some of the tracks by his Van der Graaf colleague David Jackson, and his vocals are in splendid form, and on both lead and backing vocals, and I especially like the quiet acoustic piano based parts. The highlight on here is the opening track called Here Come the Talkies, and it's an epic track both lyrically and musically, and I can imagine Van der Graaf Generator doing an incredible version of this. Next up, it's the Gadgets and Blue album, which was put out by Plastic Head, and again it was a 50 pence purchase. This was a real discovery for me, as I'd never even heard of Colin Lloyd Tucker, and his vocals remind me a little of Howard Devoto and David Bowie. The Gadgets' third album was recorded in 1981 but wasn't released until 1983. I describe it as arty UK new wave pop with two drummers. It's music which really should have graced Top of the Pops at the time, rather than languishing in the vaults for nearly 2 years. Lloyd Tucker's collaborators on this album include Matt Johnson, and throughout his career he's worked with artists of the calibre of Kate Bush in the 1990s, and also on and off with Simon Fisher Turner. I'm enjoying discovering his solo records by looking on YouTube at the moment. Next it's Roy Harper and Life Mask, and this was put out on the Science Fiction label. It's his sixth album, which came out in 1973, and it's dominated by the 23-minute track The Lord's Prayer, where he's joined by Jimmy Page. And Jimmy Page also plays elsewhere on the album. Just as an aside, I saw Roy Harper and Jimmy Page live back in the 1980s. And next it's Japanese Breakfast and Soft Sounds from Another Planet. And this was put out on the Dead Oceans label, and includes the lyrics. Japanese Breakfast is the band name used by Michelle Zorner, and this was her second album under that name. There's some modern production techniques at play here, such as auto-tuning and a very murky mess of keyboards and guitar at times, which managed to obscure the thoughtful lyrics. But clearly she is a musician with real ambition and skill and could become, I think, a major artist in the future. And next up, it's Teddy Thompson and A Piece of What You Need, and this was put out on the Verve label. His parents, of course, were Richard and Linda Thompson. It's slick modern pop music, and but combined with some literate songwriting, which at its best paints pictures in your mind as you're listening. On songs such as Turning the Gun on Myself, he's obviously learnt a lot from his father Richard on songwriting skills. Next up we've got King Crimson, Starless and Bible Black on the EG label, and I picked this one up for 25 pence, can you believe? And it's the 1989 remaster by Robert Fripp and Tony Arnold, and it's more experimental than its predecessor Lark's Tongues in Aspic. This CD sounds stunning on the light and shade of the instrumental tracks. Bill Bruford's drumming is exceptional throughout, and along with bassist John Wetton, they even add an element of funkiness on the title track. Next, it's the Stranglers' Greatest Hits 1977-1990, and this was put out on the Epic label. It's a truncated best of, which doesn't do full justice to their early punk phase, and also places too much emphasis on redundant cover versions. But their credentials as one of the UK's greatest ever melodic pop bands is emphatically stated on tracks such as Duchess, Golden Brown, Strange Little Girl and Always the Sun. Okay, next we've got Electronic and Twisted Tenderness on the Parlophone label. And Electronic, I think, went out on a high with this album. It's co-produced by Arthur Baker, who'd produced New Order. Johnny Marr is far more happy than he was before to show off his guitar skills. And the more dance music based tracks, I think, such as Make It Happen and Breakdown, have dated slightly. Like no other, Flicker and the title track are New Order-esque mid-tempo numbers which show off Bernard Sumner's vocals to great effect. Next up, it is Bob Dylan and Blood on the Tracks on Columbia. His 15th studio album. Personally, I prefer Desire, the album that came up after this one. But there are, of course, a number of excellent songs on here, such as Tangled Up in Blue, Simple Twist of Fate, Idiot Wind, and what I like is the enjoyment that Bob Dylan is clearly getting from the wordplay. And I do enjoy the acoustic bass backing as well, although I've always felt actually that it does sort of peter out towards the end of the album. Okay, now we've got Eagles of Death Metal and Peace, Love and Death Metal on the Antacid audio label. This was a 25 pence purchase. A friend at work lent me this record a few years ago, and I was totally underwhelmed by it at the time. Listening to it again, their debut album still feels like a lackluster affair and more like a spoof rather than genuine garage rock. Maybe Josh Homme should have taken more of an active role in proceeding. Next up we've got Iggy Pop and Brick by Brick on the Virgin label, and this was his ninth solo album, and it was an attempt to try and reach a wider audience after a career dip in the 1980s. Don Was produces. It's a bit too much straightforward rock for my liking. So for example, you've got members of Guns N' Roses involved on some of the tracks and also in co-writing. Candy, which is a track with Kate Pearson, is more like it. It's a real fun track. Also of interest is the cover of Something Wild by John Hyatt, which is closer to garage rock and all the better for it, I think. And this one is Bill Ryder and If, and this was put out on Double Six, and it's the debut album by the former guitarist from the Coral. However much he enjoyed playing for the Coral, this album makes you realise how constrained he must have been musically when he was with the band. Some of the music on here is performed by the Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra. Most of it is instrumental. And like Moss Side Story by Barry Adamson, which I picked up a few months ago, it serves as a calling card for him doing work on film soundtracks. And yes, it's well worth buying if you see this around. Okay, and that's the latest CD purchases from charity shops, and I'll see you again very soon. Just take care.